Some games have a theme, but don't really have a theme. Welcome to Tabletop Shop.
Hello and welcome back to the Tabletop Shop podcast. Today on the pod, we're looking at an Uwe Rosenberg's Cave vs. Cave, followed up by a short list of games whose themes don't quite come through so well in their mechanisms. I am one of your co-hosts, Nate Clark, and as always, seated across the country from me, sometimes with some issues, is your other co-host, Mr. Cody Pennington.
Turn it up. Christmas jam.
Cody,
yeah.
I know that we're recording this before Christmas, but it's being released after Christmas. So.
Oh, dang it. I didn't think of
man.
that. Got to cut the whole thing. Scrap it.
But I like your TSO reference. I dig it.
Thanks, dude. Yeah, I have not listened to TSO for a long time.
You listening? You listen to it this year? Is
No.
there some part of your Christmas cycle still? No? Okay. Oh, that's
I
fine.
just suddenly remembered that TSO was a thing, and it's like, You know, when you grow up listening to a bunch of Christmas stuff, and like some of it's cheesy,
Yeah.
it kind of just leaves a bad taste in your mouth. I think there was some TSO that I just got tired of.
That's fair. Some of it's good, I think, though. Some of it
Some is good.
All right, Cody. I got a question for you.
I've been long awaiting.
Kind of a two-part question. But I'm just going to start with, what haven't you been playing? What do you own that you haven't been playing? And so my two-parter for this is, what is in your collection that has not been played for a while, that you're okay with that? You're like, nah, whatever. And what in your collection that has not been played in a while are you itching to get back to the table?
Whew. Let me look through the 70 games in my list here. Collection.
Do you have Iki?
Yeah.
Is that what it's called? Iki? That feels
No.
weird to say. I don't think I've ever said that before. But
I prefer not
isn't
to
that
play
that
icky games.
That Japanese themed game. Do you have that?
I
I'm thinking of
I do not.
Gugong. You have Gugong.
Oh yeah, I have Gugong. I've not played Gugong in a while. Only played it once. Maybe I'll play it again someday. We'll see.
Probably not. It'll sit on that shelf till it's sold.
Yeah, Barrage has been sitting on the shelf for a long time. I need to play that again because it's dope.
Mm-hmm.
Just looking down here. You know what? Dinosaur World. We pulled out and learned and played like half a round and then had to put it away.
You've never
that
played
was
a full game.
No, that was like a couple months ago. That's right. You got that for me for my birthday.
That's funny.
Yeah, I still haven't played a full game.
Well, first world problems.
Yeah. And let's also throw Raiders of the North Sea. Still haven't played a full game of that.
Really?
Had that for a while. Yeah.
So what's something that you haven't played that you're fine? Like you're like, whatever. I don't really care.
Manhattan Project, Energy Empire specifically. That one, it's like I'm on the fence on getting rid of it. Kirsten likes it. So, I mean, that's obviously...
So you'll probably trade it to me then.
Sure, yeah. But I won't tell her, then we'll find out later. Yeah, I don't know. I just need to play it again. It's just something about it that doesn't grip me, but I can objectively understand that it's a good game.
Well,
do you know what I mean?
The theme's not that gripping, is it?
Yeah, it's like energy. Yay.
Yeah, that doesn't help.
Yeah. I don't even have the energy to play this game.
All right, well, let's talk about some new plays.
All right.
I have a few. You have nothing, Cody?
I'll go first, and I'll say I have no new plays. Although, we played a game of Gloomhaven, which, of course, I played Gloomhaven before. But, it's a scenario I haven't played before, so that counts, right?
You're going to mention it every time.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that's all I got.
Technically, I've actually played this before, but it was a couple years ago, and I didn't play a full game of it. So, just played Bonanza again. This is an old Uwe Rosenberg card game. Trading card game, bean trading card game, as it were.
Okay.
Kind of a, you have you have a hand of cards and you can plant beans in front of you, but you can only plant from like you can't rearrange your hand. It's one of those games. So you have to plant from the order that they're in your hand, but then you can also trade things from your hand to other people. You can like just give things to other people. Cards are flipped up from the top stack that you can trade with other people. It's basically just a big trading game, and you're trying to collect sets and build on those sets and then harvest them, but you can only have 2 sets going at the same time. And so the more cards in your set, the more like points you'll get. Basically just a big competitive set collection card trading game. Kind of weird. I didn't love it, but it seems like a fine design. It's just kind of, I don't know, it feels dated too. I think it's from the 90s. So, yeah. Also played Alien Frontiers. You familiar with this at all?
No, I've heard the name.
I believe I meant to fact check this and I forgot. I believe Alien Frontiers might have been the first Kickstarter game. I could be wrong.
Oh, really?
I believe it
So this is
might
old,
have
then.
been. It's from like 2010 or something. But actually it looks pretty good. Not gonna lie. I don't want to say it was the first dice placement game because I have no idea. But it might have been also one of the first dice placement games too. It's at the very least, it's definitely the oldest one I know about or have played. But basically, you're all competing to colonize a planet, and so there's all these like space ports around the planet that you can place your dice on. There's a couple different resources. One's more valuable than the other, but you're using them both to purchase cards and use cards, but ultimately the goal is to build little colonizing hubs on the planet, and that part of the game is area control. So the planet's divided up into like 9 different sections, and if you have the majority, you win like a special power, and you get a point. You get a point for like every colonizing hub, plus an extra point if you have the majority in a section, plus you get like the special power from that section. So the perimeter is like competitive dice placement, and then the center is like area control, basically. They work pretty well together. It was kind of fun. Anna mopped the floor. I played it with a few people, and Anna just destroyed us, as she usually does. But it was fun, and it looked all right. Actually, the components were pretty decent. The dice were a bit ugly, but the little colonizing hubs were actually kind of nifty. They were like a little like plastic clear dome with like a little tiny little like city skyline inside of it. Surprisingly cool for a bit of an older game. Yeah. So that was fun.
I'm looking at it right now. It looks pretty cool.
It's probably lighter weight even than it looks, but as all dice placement games, I think have a kind of special thinkiness to them. Yeah, so it's fun. I also got another Suchi design to the table. So this is Messina 1347. This I feel like is not one of his more popular games, actually. The theme is centered around the Black Plague and trying to kind of stop it, or it focuses on a city called Messina, and it's basically just a big heavy euro where you are actually, but the theme actually, I feel like the theme integrates pretty well. You're going into the city with your workers, and you are kind of rescuing people from the city, and then those people that you rescue can do lots of different things on your player board. You can build workshops for them to go into and work in and create resources for you. Or the best part is if they're sick, then they go into quarantine huts. And then they basically have like this 2-round waiting period, and then they come out of the quarantine hut and they can be used on your player board. But you can upgrade your quarantine huts to also have them like produce things while they're in quarantine, which is kind of funny. And then those workers go on to your player board.
You're sick, but you're still going to do something.
Exactly. I love it. Yeah. But then those little like worker pieces go onto your player board, and there's this whole like action kind of selection rondelle system almost a little bit, where like there's a lot of different spaces those workers can fill, and then you have like 3 overseers that like can move around that board and trigger different actions with them. So it's pretty cool. There's some, I guess not exploration. It reminds me of Expeditions in a way, because the main board is like a hex grid, and all the hexes have different actions, and then the workers will kind of be randomly populated, or the little like worker tokens will be randomly populated onto those spaces, and so will plague cubes. And so you have to like burn the plague, which is kind of like doing the vanquishing action in Expeditions. Basically, you like spend fire tokens to burn the plague, and then you get a reward for it, all this kind of stuff. And And then you're like taking main actions on the board to collect resources so you can build huts and stuff for the citizens that you rescue. It's really convoluted. We've actually played it a couple times now, and there's so much. It has the typical Euro issue. I don't know if it's an issue, but the typical Euro syndrome of there's so much I want to do, and you just cannot do all of it. You probably couldn't even do half of it. And so it's just like really picking what to focus on is hard in this game. It's really hard because everything blends so well that you're really tempted to try and stretch out, try and spread yourself too thin because everything's kind of meshing a little bit. And you're like, oh, because if I did this, then I could do that maybe, but I shouldn't mess with that because I'm not really focusing on it, you know? So it's got that typical issue, but it's fun. I like it.
The thing about Vladimir, dude, is he's such a great designer.
Okay, let's just get on to the game of the week. You had nothing to contribute to this segment, Cody.
I had nothing. Hey, what I will say is that I have a Vladimir Succi game on pre-order, Evacuation, which sounds like it's to be a masterpiece. And I'm disappointed because on Game Nerds, it said the release date is November 30th, and it's still listed as pre-order. Hasn't been released yet. Come on.
I don't know what to tell you. Except that you might not see it for a while still. Who knows?
Yeah, we'll see.
That happened to me with one of the Dune Imperium things. I don't know if it was...
I remember that.
Yeah.
Because you pre-ordered it through a game store, right?
I did. Well, that was a very annoying issue. Yeah. Anyways, I guess we should move on to our game of the week, Cody.
It's been too long.
All right, Cody, you must do this. You must do this thing.
All right, game of the week time. Nate called it Cave versus Cave in the intro, but technically it's Caverna, Cave versus Cave.
So this would be in the Caverna family then, right, Cody?
Yeah, I guess it would. Here we are using the appropriate use of
But
family.
do you think Agricola is in that family? Is it maybe called the Agricola family?
Oh.
Probably not, because I think those are different enough games.
I'm going to Agricola now.
Maybe it's just in the Rosenberg agriculture family.
Yeah. Planting with Uwe through a series of games.
The bean game I mentioned is also Rosenberg, so it's also...
Dang it, Uwe. Like, get away from your farming roots. I'm just kidding. I respect your games, even though Kirsten did not like Agricola so much that we ended up selling it.
Anna hated that game with a passion.
Really?
That was one of the few games she walked away from. Like, she was like, I'm in a worse mood than when we started playing this game.
Did she start in a bad mood?
No. She just playing the game put her in a worse mood than instead of like improving her mood. Like, oh, that was fun. I enjoyed it. Yeah.
Okay, well that's a little bit sad, but it Agricola seems to be a pretty divisive game if that's the case for both of our wives.
Yeah.
But Caverna Cave versus Cave, here's a refreshing drink of water for those who are parched from the Uwe universe. The thing is, I haven't actually played Caverna, and I know that this is the 2-player variant. I don't know if it can be called the 2-player variant of Caverna.
I wonder.
It's pretty stripped down, I think.
Yeah, I wonder how similar they really are, because I haven't played Caverna either.
But it's a derivative, so I guess it sort of counts. This is your minuscule Uwe Rosenberg experience down into a 2-player game. So Cave versus Cave, each player has their own personal board, Uwe style, like Agricola, where you have a little grid where you can be placing buildings and different additions. But in this case, it's a cave that has sort of an asymmetric structure that's filled with rubble. And you're slowly, well, I guess it's not rubble. It's just
cave.
It's unexcavated cave. So on your turn, there's different actions you can take, like Agricola style, where there's different action spaces that are kind of randomized according to the era, but as the eras advance, you get access to stronger actions that are available to everybody. So it's not really worker placement because you don't have workers. It's just action selection, really, or action drafting.
Would
that be action drafting?
Okay, here's the thing, Cody. This is something that I found interesting when I was kind of thinking about this game. What is this mechanism technically? Is it, and how is it different from worker placement necessarily? right? Because in a way, isn't worker placement just like competitive action selection?
It kind of is. I feel like it's something where it can be a little bit loosely defined, because some things, I mean, that's a game is just taking concepts and then reskinning them with, thematicness, right?
Theme?
So, themeness. In my mind, I think what more closely defines a worker placement is you have a pool of resources that you should get back each round in some way, or you'll get more. And you use those to claim spaces that are available every round to everybody. But if you claim something, someone else can't claim it that round.
I think that, right, but I think that is the same as if there were just lots of spots on a board. Well, okay, so like cave versus cave, for example. Like, the only way that this isn't worker placement is that you're not actually physically placing workers, right?
Yeah,
you're claiming actions and the other person can't claim it, right? And so instead of a placeholder, you're just moving the tile to signify that you're using it and somebody else can't, right?
So arguably, this could be a worker placement game. All you'd have to do is just use something
Place
to
workers.
represent like a meeple. Yeah. So this is a pseudo worker placement game then.
What
in the Agricola style.
The potential that worker placement games have is to have the workers have unique abilities and people being able to unlock more than other people, right? There's a lot more flexibility in doing different things if you actually have those workers, right? Whereas action selections, it's a little bit harder to make it more complex in that sense. But
yeah, I guess that's common. At least, viticulture and Agricola, you can acquire more workers, but you don't necessarily have to. Dune Imperium's the same way,
right? Or special workers, or you can upgrade your workers.
Yeah, but like Lost Ruins of Arnak is worker placement, but you always just have 2 workers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. This isn't the worker placement discussion podcast, Nate. This is the cave versus cave podcast. As I was saying like 20 minutes ago, you excavate your cave and you make spaces where you can build new rooms. And the rooms that you can build there, and you start with like one basic room. They give you actions or they give you bonuses that can trigger through different scenarios in the game that will give you resources. You can then take those resources and purchase and build more room tiles. And that's basically the whole game. The room tiles will give you points at the end. One of the resources is gold, which is a wild, but you also get like 1 point per gold. So that's really the only other way to get points in this game. That's cave versus cave.
That's cave versus cave. I think like my first positive for this is that, and I'll be quick because we kind of just talked about it, but that actual mechanism of selecting actions I think is really cool. I like the kind of Agricola style and maybe also Caverna style, I don't know, but at least the Agricola style of there's going to be more actions every round and we're going to be introducing a new, better, much more powerful action every round as we progress through the game. I like that system a lot.
Yeah, I like it too. It's something I've missed from Agricola, and I think for a 2-player variant, Cave versus Cave does a really good job of incorporating that. It's just cool how you can slowly unlock more powerful actions later in the game, but they appear sort of at random times. But if you played the game enough, you know what to expect. Like, right. I need to wait because then there's going to be this final one that lets me both like excavate and build a room on the same turn, and that's really powerful. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, Agricola is very much the same way. It's like, I know that such and such a card is going to either be in the first round of the 5th era or the second round of the 5th era, so I'm not going to do it in the last round of the 4th era or whatever,
Yeah, smart. Yeah, I am going to put this game into a little category that I am defining as small, rich games. This is something I think really over the past year, maybe over the course of 2023, that I've really come to like, and I've specifically been looking for games that in my mind fit into this category. So this would be like Seven Wonders Duel. Acrotiri is kind of like that. It's a little bit longer, perhaps. Yeah. I'm trying to think of some others. There's others I played. Basically games that fit in a small box for the most part. They're quick and easy to set up, but they offer a lot of depth. So it's a small, rich game. And I think Cave vs. Cave definitely fits the bill. And I was very thrilled to find this. I don't think this was a new game I had played this year, but I'm pretty sure it made my top 10 games I had played last year. I don't really remember.
So another thing, I don't know if that was that a point or not, Cody? I don't really know what that was.
I was sort of musing and trying to remember. This is I'm gonna say this is number 26 on my list.
Okay.
I know Kirsten doesn't like it as much, so we don't play it super frequently, but I think it's a magical game.
Magical. I don't know if I'd use that.
Magical. Your turn.
One thing I appreciate about this, which is kind of funny, but I actually appreciate that the resources aren't too tight. I didn't feel like they were anyways. I felt like there were a lot of times where, I guess in my head also comparing this to Agricola again, where like resources are super competitive and super tight. It felt more bountiful in this game, which makes it a little bit less stressful.
Yeah, it's definitely less punishing.
Absolutely.
And that's what makes it a little bit more fun. I like the function of excavating your cave to make space for new rooms. It's like one thing to just start with a blank slate like you have in Agricola, and then you can just start filling that grid with stuff. But I like how you have to take actions to remove and open up spaces, and then you can fill those spaces with useful things. And that's paired with the room requirements, different rooms that you want to build. So there's like this center queue or center
market, basically.
Market, yeah, center market of rooms that everyone can draft from, and there's only one copy of each room. But each of them not only has a resource cost, but they have a wall requirement. So, for example, if you were to get like one of them is like a cell or like a dungeon, you have to have an area with 4 like covered walls in order to build that. And so in your little grid, you can, obviously there's corners of this little area. So if you're building like in the corner, you have 2 walls already built there, but then you can build more walls to satisfy requirements for rooms. All that to say, you can excavate in a way that gives you access more easily to spaces that fit those wall requirements. And I just think that's pretty dope.
I'm going to disagree on that, actually. I think the wall requirements take away from the fluidity of the game. I think it feels like a very extra thing it feels like something that was put in just to make things a little bit more difficult. And like maybe not the wall requirements in and of themselves, but the ability to build more walls, I found also kind of just distracting in general. Yeah. But I did
That's odd, because if you took that out of the game, that would drastically change the course of the game. It's a pretty big component.
Well, I've only played the game once, so maybe I don't have the most valid opinion.
I agree.
I do, of course you do. I do also, as long as I disagree with you, you'll agree with me on that point.
Sure.
I do like the exploration part, though. That is very cool. All of these rooms basically starting face down, and you are taking actions to explore your map so that you can later build rooms, but the things you explore go into that open market that either you or the other person can purchase. And then there's even some resources underneath some things, which is cool. That kind of exploration in general, I think, is cool, like mechanically, but also thematically works very well and makes sense.
Yeah. I've said enough good things about the game, so I'm ready to start trashing it.
Me too. That's all I have.
All right. So as I was thinking about this, and I don't actually have that many dislikes, because again, I like this game quite a bit. But primarily, the game doesn't necessarily reward you for everything you do. And by that, I mean, it can be a little bit punishing if you get to the end of the game and maybe you have a bunch of resources of one type, but all that's left is a couple rooms of very specific resource requirements, or you've built an engine in such a way that you need resources that you don't have. I get that can just be part of the strategy, but this feels like it tips a little more to the end of where you have to be careful with everything you're getting, or you might burn yourself towards the end of the game. And I don't really like the slippery slope nature of that.
Are you saying you feel like the game goes too long then?
No, not too long. It's just I feel like in most engine builders, you can pivot if you need to. And if you're coming up towards the end of the game, you can see like, okay, I don't have much use for these resources, so I'm going to convert them, or I'm going to do something, and I'll still be able to get some points out of it. But cave versus cave, if you don't plan super well, or you don't run your engine super well, it can come down to like, if I just had one more resource of this, that's the difference of like building like an 8-point room or not building it at all. And if I don't build it, there's nothing else I can do with all these resources I've collected at the end. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. One thing I would say that also bothers me about this is that I feel like, and you might totally disagree on this, but I feel like there are too many different types of resources in the game. It's excessive, I think. There's at least, 6, right? Including gold?
Yeah. I think it might be exactly 6.
It feels a bit excessive to me, honestly. Now, like I said, I appreciate the fact that it feels like resources aren't that hard to get compared to some of his other games, but I felt like there were just too many, and it seemed a bit unnecessary to have so many different resources.
I hadn't thought about that, but I think I actually agree, and that probably contributes to the point I was just describing.
Yeah, right, because if you're spreading yourself out over 6 different resources, then there's a greater chance that you might fall one short on something because you have to focus on so many different types of resources.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be, if there's like a second edition of this game, that would be cool if they just get rid of, because there's like you don't even remember thematically what the resources are. There's like wheat, and then there's like
green wheat,
barley, green wheat, whatever it is. Yeah, I don't remember. Just get rid of the green one. Just keep the white one or the yellow one.
Yeah.
I only have one other dislike, which is it kind of relates to the resources you're talking about, but I think it's mildly annoying just managing all of the resources you have. You have this little track and all these little pieces that you're trying to fit on the little spaces of the track itself. It's just a little thing. It's just a physical aspect of the game, but it's mildly annoying.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's fair. Didn't bother me too much. What did bother me is the look of the game in general.
Oh.
Is just kind of drab, I think. It's just not very attractive. And I feel like Uwe games in general are like this. I don't know who does all the art. I know he does some of it actually, but a lot of these types of games from him just do not look good in my opinion. And this one very much, with all the grays and browns and blacks, and everything just kind of feels like washed. All the colors just kind of feel washed together. I get that they're cave farmers. Like, there's not a lot of joy in their lives, and that is, I feel like, it's reflected in the look of the game.
You're farming in a place where there's no sunlight. Yeah.
Yeah. But I just, it's ugly and unattractive, Cody. So, but the biggest thing for me is a general statement. Just kind of that I feel like nothing really interesting happens.
Sure.
I do like the action selection mechanism. I think that's good, but also it's more or less, it feels like it's being taken from, like Agricola or whatever. But I do like that mechanism, and I like the actions being added on. But the game, like, there's no exciting moments. It's just like either things work out and your engine kind of works and you're able to get the buildings you want and pay for things, or it doesn't. And either you're like satisfied that things actually worked, or you're just angry that things didn't. But I feel like there are never any moments where something great happens, or like, yeah, it's kind of just like, it's just pain in a way, but not in the Agricola sense where like the game's really tight and punishing. It's just like, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of joy in the game. Yeah.
So you're saying if you play this, you might come away in a worse mood than when you started?
I might, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I can see your point. I don't think it bothers me nearly as much. I just enjoy the overall experience of it. But I agree that there definitely could be...
To me, it's
an
like...
expansion or something that fixes it.
To me, it's like functional architecture. It's like he built something that works and does its job, but he didn't build something that people can really appreciate and get joy out of. Now, maybe that's just me, right? That's the way I view the game and when I play it, whatever. But that's what it feels like. It feels like here's this functioning game and it works. And that's it,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to get Era 2, which is the expansion for this, and see if that spices things up a bit. I remember that it adds a couple interesting things. It also adds like 3 more resources, so that's the thing.
Doesn't it add like donkeys or something? Mules?
Oh, you know what? I think you're right. Like just one, though. Or like
just
what,
one
a resource of that. Yeah, just
probably. The mule
one mule
resource.
for everybody. Yeah. So I hope to get that soon. It's been out of print in most of the places I've been looking, but at some point I'll get it, and then we'll do a podcast, and it will be something new that I played, and I'll talk about it, and it'll be exciting.
I'm sure. I look forward to it, Cody.
Do you know what I'm looking forward to?
Why don't you tell me?
Our board banter.
Board banter.
Yeah. You want to tell the people about the banter? This, I believe, was your concept as a banter?
Might have been. Because we have a whole list, and yeah, so maybe if it did, it was a while ago that I thought of it. But basically, we're doing our top 3 games that have the worst theme integration, where the mechanisms don't really reflect the theme all that well. There's kind of a disconnect between them, and so we'll see. I mean, it's kind of a weird list, and you mentioned to me that you had a little trouble making it, kind of, and I did it too, in a way. Like, they were all it required more thinking. It required more like going through some games and thinking like, okay, what are the mechanisms in this game? Okay, what is the theme really? Does that work? Does it make sense? It was a bit strange.
Yeah, I think part of it is that games, in general, they're not realistic. Like, that's kind of the thing.
Sure.
But putting that aside, there's definitely some games that do a worse job of integrating something that makes thematic sense with what you're doing in the game. And where this, in my opinion, is the worst is when a game claims that you're doing something, like it has an explanation for what the theme is, but then you play the game, you're like, no, that's not, no.
Are you referring?
You could put any theme on this, and that's not what's happening.
Are you referring to something in particular, or is that just a general statement? I'm curious.
I am referring to one, which was my number 1.
Oh, okay. Well, of course. Why would that was a dumb question on my part.
Yeah, come on, dude. What are you talking about?
Why don't I start with my number 4, actually, Cody? Now, this is kind of an honorable mention that I wanted to put on the
You had me panicking there for a second. I was like, we did 3. What are you talking about?
No, okay. So I almost put Scout on here because Scout has a circus theme, kind of, but it's really just a trick-taking game. I did not put it on the list though, because actually when I went to its page on BGG, I discovered 2 things. One, I discovered that the Scout with the circus theme is actually a reprint of the original game, which has no theme at all. It's just numbers. So I was like, okay, well then I feel like it can't make the list anyways, because the game was originally designed without a theme anyways. So that's fine.
Okay.
But then also, even the circus themed one, if you look at the BGG page, there's no explanation or even mention of the theme whatsoever. It just mentions how the game functions. So I was like, all right, there's obviously just no theme at all. And so I guess I can't say that the mechanisms don't reflect the theme, because there just isn't one. So I wanted to put it on my list, but I didn't. So instead, I'll do my number 3, I guess.
That's a cool story, bro.
You're not going to like my number 3, actually, Cody. You're not going to like it.
Oh, really? Well, you mean I'm not going to like that it's on the list, or I'm just not going to like the game?
You may not approve that it's on the list, because actually we might have talked about this kind of last episode. So my number 3 is Fantasy Realms.
I'm a little nervous now.
It's Fantasy Realms. Because at the end of the day, it's just a hand management game. And basically, so the theme is that you're like recruiting not even mercenaries, just like different random classes of creatures to build the most like formidable army. But really, you just start with a hand, and then you're just exchanging cards. You're either drawing cards off the top of the deck, or you're exchanging cards with the area in the middle, which is a very cool timer, but again, thematically makes no sense whatsoever. Like, what is this band of rejects that we're like exchanging cards from our hand from, and once there's 10, the game ends? It's like... And then on top of that, the theme in itself is just, typical fantasy. I don't know. It's just, to me, it's like there's no immersion whatsoever. I'm just reading the text and trying to make things click and trying to build the best hand, you know?
I see where you're coming from, but I don't like that this is on the list. And we did indeed talk about this last episode, or there was the episode before, I forget. And, you know, it's a card game, so it's kind of to be expected that if there's only cards, it's hard to really integrate much more beyond that.
You think
but
so?
To me, I think I think thematically I mean, it depends. It depends on the card. It depends how immersive or extensive the game is. But I don't think it bothers me that much. I think the timer is just a necessary way to end the game. I mean, like, lots of games have rounds. It's like, well, why are we just playing like 4 rounds? Like, why can't we keep going? Like, does time just stop at the year's end now? You know? And I think the most thematic integration of the cards is how they score off of each other and what their names. Like, if you have the dragon, you know, the dragon is going to burn up everything else, so he's going to negate all of your other cards. So you have to have something like a wizard that can, you know, tame and what's the word?
Domesticate.
Calm down the dragon. So yeah, so he's cool. Soothe, conciliate.
Okay.
Anyway, things like that. Or if you have like a mountain, the mountain will still score because dragons like mountains and they hang out on mountains and so forth. So it's thematic, dude.
But what you're talking about aren't mechanisms. You're talking about the theme alone.
I'm kind of wondering now if our lists are gonna line up super well. I just went with the top 3 games with worst theme integration. I mean, to me that is a mechanism. It's a scoring mechanism.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe.
Based off of each other. So, ha! I win.
Wait. What's your number?
We ran out of rounds, dude. Okay, my number 3. Hey, I'm sorry to be slamming your pick. You can have your pick.
I'll take it.
I will say that it's a dumb pick, but I'll allow that it's there. My number 3, I'm not sure how you're going to feel about this. I feel like you'll probably agree. King Domino. Take that, Bruno Catala. This is a fun, simple game that you made, but why on earth? How does this work? if we're building a kingdom, it's not like there's 3 or 4 kingdoms that are all bidding on a plot of land that they'll then unearth and move to their kingdom and arrange it in such a way. Like, that's not how things work. It's not how castle building works.
I'm gonna piggyback, Cody, because this is also my number 2, actually.
Okay, take it, Nate.
Specifically the draft. Like, again, we're looking at like, okay, here, this is the mechanism, this is the theme, and of course there has to be some grace given, right? But it's like, so there's a huge limited supply of random terrains that we're drafting and then creating kingdoms. Like, why? Like, huh? How are we Why are we drafting? How are we drafting? Whose idea was it to draft? Who's running the draft? There's so much. And again, the game is great. We both like the game. It's very light, but it's fun. It's a fun puzzle. I feel like the theme could have been, they could have picked a better theme though, honestly.
Yeah.
Where the assembly makes more sense, right? And the drafting.
Sure. Now, I will say that admittedly, all of this is dumb thematically, but I do appreciate that the game makes fun of itself. Like, they acknowledge that. So if you look at the cover of King Domino, sometimes in the game you can end up with like a void, like a single square that you can't put a domino in. Mm-hmm. And it, like, on the cover, if you look this up on BGG, I think you can just see it on the cover of the box. There's like,
isn't there like water falling through the hole or
there's
something?
There's like a water spot and then just a chasm like next to it, and the water is just like spilling off the face of the earth. Yeah. So it's kind of fun.
I wonder, before you made this, did you actually look at the BGG page for this? Because I'm wondering what the I'm going to look it up right now. King Domino 2016. Let's see here. You are a lord seeking new lands in which to expand your kingdom. You must explore all the lands, including wheat fields, lakes, and mountains, in order to spot the best plots, while competing with other lords to acquire them first.
but for some reason you can take that plot and put it anywhere you want.
Put it into your kingdom.
Yeah. Like, what?
Doesn't work very well.
No, not for... I mean, yeah, I see what they're going for, but nah. Wait, alternate names. King Domino XXL? Is there like a mega version of this?
Sounds like it, man.
That'd be pretty cool. Well, maybe I should jump to my number 2.
I guess so, because that one was my number 2.
Yeah, this is a game that I have trashed plenty over the course of our podcasting, that I don't understand why it's so popular, and I think it's dumb, and I don't own it anymore because I got rid of it, and I'm a man of my word.
I think I know where you're going with this.
This is... It was even so popular, they made another version of it that I don't think is any different from the first. This is The Crew, Quest for Planet 9. You're astronauts. You have radios. You don't have to use hand signals. Why are you taking tricks? How does that... What is that? It's a trick-taking game.
The real
with
question...
no theme.
The real question is, why did they even bother? But again, maybe the secondary question is, would this game have sold as well if it had been themeless? Right? If it had just been numbers on cards, maybe it wouldn't have sold as well. Maybe it was just a marketing thing. And they're like, I don't care that this is going to show up on the tabletop shop top 3 games with worst theme integration. They're like, I think I'll absorb the risk on this one and try and up the sales.
It does make me wonder, is it possible to make a trick-taking game where that mechanism thematically makes sense in any way? Like, you might just kind of be shooting yourself in the foot at that point.
Maybe if it's a game where people are playing a trick-taking game.
Ooh, that's so meta. We should do that.
You play as a character who's like playing a trick-taking game.
We'll make a game about players playing unthematic games. And there's a series of mini games with all of our least favorite unthematic games. And one of those is The Crew.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, what's your number 1?
My number one. We were both really excited about this game. We were both really excited about it. It was really popular. I remember in particular that Tom Vassell really, really liked it.
I think I have a guess.
You bought a copy of it.
Keep going, though.
You bought a copy of it.
I did.
Maybe even on my recommendation. I'm not sure. And honestly, I think the game actually wasn't that bad. We only ever played it once. To my knowledge, you never played it again until you sold it. But Beyond the Sun, I actually would like to play again. I think that actually it was probably a pretty good design. I like the tech tree thing. However, as cool as the tech tree thing is, it is a tech tree. Like, that is kind of the theme in a way. Now, the real theme is that you're like exploring planets and you're upgrading your technology so that you can explore better. I don't know. And there is a tiny little portion of the game where you're moving dice around that represent ships, which is kind of stupid. And that's like a tiny little section of the game. The majority of the game is this huge tech tree. Listen, very cool. The first game we played was rough. I would like to play it again. Very cool. But it's just a big tech tree. That, to me, does not even... You're like, okay, thematically, we're like unlocking new technologies and using these to do things on that tiny little spaceport with the cube, the dice on it. But to me, it's just like, we're just playing tech tree the game, you know? So.
Sure. Yeah, this didn't make my list, obviously, because I'll say my number 1 is not that. I didn't think of this as an option, but it probably actually would be a decent candidate. But I as well miss this game. I want to play it again. Used to own it, and I think primarily... So Kirsten does not like space or space-themed things, and I really like space-themed things. But this was space-themed to a very drab extent.
It was just like, black and white.
It sort of looks like space, which I think is kind of cool. But I get how it's not particularly, I don't know, compelling, perhaps. And so she just really didn't have much interest in playing it. And I didn't know if I was really going to actually pull it out at any other time. So I just ended up selling it. But it is a game that I would like to play again someday. Maybe this will go on Board Game Arena. Then we could give it a try.
Yeah. It could be fun.
Wait, maybe it is on Board Game Arena.
Well, Cody, to return the favor, I will say that I also didn't really think about The Crew, and I would maybe bump off Fantasy Realms and put The Crew on.
Ah, okay. I'll allow it. I also have good news for you. Beyond the Sun is a premium game on Board Game Arena.
Pros and cons to that statement, then, I guess.
Yes.
What's your number one, Cody?
All right. My number one is a game that you have not played. A game I hope you never have to play.
Yes.
A game that I hope no one ever has to play. This is Neotopia.
I wondered
Neotopia.
when you said your intro earlier, I vaguely remembered you saying something kind of to the same effect in your Neotopia review. So,
yeah, not very strong thematic ties. I mean, I just didn't like this game anyway. Like, it's not a super great game by itself, but on top of that, the thematic integration is just dumb. So it's supposed to be you are an entrepreneur, like a visionary for the future. And there's this one cool new city where everyone's trying to work together, sort of. Not really, because it's competitive, to make a city that is like symbiotic with nature. And everything lives together in harmony, and it's all so cool. It's a futuristic city that also has plants in it, because we don't have plants in modern cities, right? And you're supposed to, like, as an entrepreneur, build factories and buildings and sciencey things equally in all the districts so you can score points. And how do you do that? You get some circle discs. You draft some circle discs of different colors that represent something from various places on the board. And then you can pay those circle discs to place them down on the board and satisfy a card that has a certain combination of circle discs.
I absolutely love the enthusiasm in which you like describe just the absolute themelessness that is in this game.
It is so dumb, dude. That's all I have to say. Go watch my speed review.
That's funny. Do you still have this, or did you already get rid of it?
I have not been able to get rid of it yet.
Because nobody wants it.
Well, I don't know where, like, who would want this? I don't even want to go through the effort of trying to sell this.
Facebook Marketplace, $5. Somebody will take it off your hands.
Okay, I'll do that. On top of that, the rulebook was bad. It didn't explain things very well.
Insult to injury.
Typos. Yeah.
Maybe it was because they had no thematic way to help assist in explaining the game, right?
I mean, I think it was translated, so there is that.
Oh, dear.
But, yeah, throw that on top of that.
Oh, that's great.
Well, that was a decent list.
Yeah.
I think we had some... This was almost a board ranter.
You know, something to be said for this, Cody, is that at least there are games out there, as awful as they are, like Hamsters versus Hippos, that had no chance of being on this list, at least, right? You know, it's not like
That's
awful
true.
games will be on every single list of awful games.
I don't want to talk about it, man.
Give it that, at least.
Except not. Like, that should have made the list. I think it's just, I don't even count that as a real game, so I think I just didn't think of it for the list, but this definitely would have been a runner-up or possibly made the list. Like, why do hamsters care about lily pad flowers? Like, that is not a native hamster environment thing. And why are hippos preying on these hamsters?
I think that...
And it said hamsters escaped a zoo enclosure. How many zoos have hamsters? Is that common? That's a pet store.
That would have been funnier. Hamsters escaped a pet store and made their way to a nearby lake with hippopotamuses in it.
In America.
Yes.
Well, anyway, this is ending up to be a shorter episode because my timestamp is like 55 minutes right now, but we spent, I think, like 10 minutes working out technical difficulties. Should we just talk about something for the people?
Talk about something. Well, how about this, Cody? How about impromptu board Banter prompt? You ready for this?
Okay. What you got?
How do you define a game? Because what you just said, that you almost don't count Hamsters versus Hippos as a game. I would say that I probably agree with you. It's more of a activity, I guess. But then what's the difference and how do you actually define a game?
Sure. What I meant by that is I didn't... You remember back in Way Brothers days and we would get review copies of like very tiny games sent to us from people that were like trying to get the games published? and they'd always be terrible.
Yeah,
I don't really count those as real games. It's not that they weren't games. It's that it's like I don't know. Like Carrots. I don't know if we played Carrots together, but I don't know if I even include Carrots on a game that I have played. Maybe I did. Does that kind of make sense? It's like if somebody made a prototype of a bad game and then they gave it to you and you played it, it's like, is this worthy of even being entered on the BGG system?
So you're saying that it's very kind of subjective, like based on how well the game was made, how much thought was put into it. Because like we also received Doomlings, and say what you want about Doomlings, I think that counts.
Yeah, and Doomlings is at least like rank 5,000 on BGG, so I feel like that qualifies it, right? I don't know. What about Escalation? Remember Escalation? Would you count that as a game?
Dude, I don't remember a thing about that game. That thrift store find is like an 80s game, some kind of weird abstract war game.
Yeah.
I don't know. I cannot speak to that. But in general, I would say that a game has to have skill. There has to be... It's not a game if anybody can just win based off of luck. So I would say that Apples to Apples is not a game. I would say that Hamsters versus Hippos is not a game. Because if you get unlucky, you lose. If you get lucky, you win. And that's all there is to it. And Apples to Apples is more or less the same thing. So any game that falls into that category... Any game where you can't get better by playing it. Like, I just, to me, those are not games. You know?
I'd probably have to spend some time thinking about how I personally would define it. It does remind me of a video I saw, though, from Vsauce. Have you seen much of Vsauce?
I don't remember.
Oh, okay. He's just a guy that, like, does thinky videos about concepts. And he does one called Why Do We Play Games? I'm looking at it right now on YouTube. And he actually breaks down someone else's definition of when something goes from being like an activity to a puzzle to a competition to a game. Like what are all the elements required that make it? Because if you take like a Rubik's Cube, it's not a game. It's just like a puzzle basically, right? But then once you start integrating like a competitive nature with someone else, then it's starting to become more of a game. And I forget what all those criteria is. Yeah. And granted, that was just someone's definition. Like, I don't think that's the official definition, but I thought it was pretty like a compelling way to kind of break down and organize everything.
Well, I guess as a basic defining attribute, somebody has to be able to win. So I would say to define a game, somebody has to be able to win. Okay. Now, even if that's cooperative and everybody wins or everybody loses, but if it's cooperative and the only option is that everyone wins and there's no way to lose, well, then that's not a game anymore. So somebody or somebodies has to be able to win. And then again, like I said before, there has to be, if we're competing to win, but everything that you do is completely luck-based, then it's still not a game to me. It's just, that's still just an activity. It's just like...
So like shoots and ladders.
Exactly. Shoots and ladders, Candyland. There's no decisions that you make in these games. And so therefore, I don't say that they're games. It's just like, well, it's just like the Magic 8 Ball. It's just like, well, let's just see what happens. That's an activity. Because you're not making any decisions. You're just starting a chain of events to see what happens. That's not a game.
So maybe a game has to have an objective, winning criteria. There has to be agreed upon rules that everyone operates within.
Yeah.
And there has to be an element of choice. Like you have agency in the game.
But not just an element of choice, because Hamsters versus Hippos has an element of choice. However, you have no information whatsoever on which to make your choice. So it's still complete blind luck, even though you're making, in quotations, technically you're making a decision. There's no foundation for that decision because you have no information. Yeah.
That's a good point. I mean, my instinct is to still say that technically Hamsters versus Hippos is a game because you can at least decide which lily pad to jump on and how long you want to stay there. It's just kind of a different category, a push your luck.
Okay,
game.
And I haven't played it. I only know about it what you've told me. Is there any way to make informed decisions, or is every decision you make just kind of arbitrary? Is there any way?
You do know how many hippos are like out there? Because it's like a 5x5 grid, and I want to say at the first round, like 2 of them are hippos. So I suppose you could watch someone else land on a hippo and then be like, now I have
hippos. Do the math, the ratio.
less hippos, so it's gone down. Yeah.
So maybe it's almost
I suppose there's some amount. Okay. Nearly a game. Nearly there.
In our impromptu board banter, we have established that Hamsters versus Hippos is almost a game.
Almost a game. It is rank 18,000. What BGG rank does something have to be in order to be a game, Nate? When does it start?
I would not say in order to be a game. I would say in order for me to look at it. I feel like even in the top 15,000, I'm willing to try.
Really?
Yeah.
15,000. Wow.
Yeah.
And I feel like there has to be a caveat because a
Maybe
game
not
that just came out. What?
It's like maybe not 15. That's really high.
Yeah, it's still pretty big.
But here's the thing, Cody. Here's the thing. Let's fast forward 100 years in the future. There's going to be a lot of games.
Dang.
All right. Yeah, 100 years is a long
There
time.
are.
There's going to be a lot of games that are in the top 1,000 now that wouldn't be 100 years in the future. Okay. So you got to account for that, right?
You know, dude, if we lived in a world where Scythe was rank 1,000 because there were 999 games better than Scythe, I wouldn't even care. I wouldn't care about trying to discuss what is a good game or not. I'd just be like, there are so many good games everywhere.
But then perspective changes.
But then
Cody.
there'd be like 200,000 bad games, so never mind.
But perspective changes, right? So like a game that everybody thought was incredible back in like the early 90s may be nowhere to be found anymore in the top 5,000, right? Because people were not enlightened in a way, to the degree that we are now, right? So people thought it was a good game then because they didn't know what good games would be now, and you could say the same thing about 50 years in the future, right? Scythe may almost objectively be not a good game anymore 50 years in the future.
Do you know what this makes me want to do?
What does it make you want to do?
Is we should have a board banter or a special episode or something where we do an official tabletop shop game prophecy. And we predict like 10 years from now. So we'll check back in. We'll make up a follow-up episode 10 years after that episode. And we'll try to say, I don't know exactly what our criteria, what our prediction would be, but it'd be like games that are still
okay, yeah,
in the top 100 or something.
Of time in some way.
Yeah.
I like it. We'll have to workshop that a little bit.
That'd be kind of fun.
But that could be fun.
Yeah. Let me know what your ideas are. Well,
what should people remember, Cody?
We filled enough time, and remember, if you live in a cave and you're competing with someone else who lives in a cave, just move into a house. That'll show them.
Cody, welcome to the outro. I want to welcome you to this warm little place where the episode peters out into the ether, and you and I, we sit here in front of this warm, crackling fire, and we just remind the people listening to keep on listening, not just to this episode, Cody, but to all of the other episodes, both past and future.
I mean, listen all the way through, get this up to 100% view duration, and then take the next episode. Yeah.